How does EMDR work at all?
Oh my God, EMDR. I mean, I'm not an expert. I've done it a few times, but I remember
when we were kids, very famously, there was a New York City cable. There was a channel, which was channel 35, channel J, which was the porn channel. How often, I guess you don't really tell this story very often, but have you ever, has anyone ever questioned the having sex with the molester when you're 19? What are the key parties?
You know, where you throw your keys into a bowl and then you'd grab keys, and whoever's keys you grabbed, you'd go have sex with them. That it was like something dark.
Meaning?
Dank. Like an obsession with like, I mean, they were adult pull-ups. So maybe it was like not something involving young people, which was like my fear for years. Maybe it was just like he...
Are you sure you're not misremembering the story and you've decided they were adult pull-ups?
Maybe I'm just protecting myself from the trauma of the moment. But I believe they were adult pull-ups.
Okay, but what's the kink anyway? Do you have any understanding? Have you ever encountered that again since then?
No. I mean, I've heard about people who are like into like scatting.
What is scatting?
Like shitting on someone.
When we were kids, very
shat on people
all the time. Very famously, there was New York City cable. There was a channel which was channel 35, channel J, which was the porn channel, and one of the ads on the porn channel was for 976 PEEEE. And the extra E is for extra P. And it was basically the commercial is like an Asian lady in a shower peeing on people.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. People like to be peed on. And I guess, but pooping in a pull-up is way different than peeing on somebody, I think.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we need to like consult a clinician for that.
Yeah, I think this is we've been doing an Ask a Therapist
really?
Segment for the show lately. So maybe we'll bring that segment to that question to Chris Paulson. So you're here on behalf of Breathe Life Healing Center. Did I say that right this time?
Technically it's centers, but even Breathe, we call it the center sometime. Breathe Life Healing Centers.
Centers.
Yeah.
All right. So I was close. But also you made a movie.
I made a movie.
Tell us about the movie.
Well, you know, it's so interesting because we were watching, well, I don't know if we can talk about what we were watching.
Sure, you can talk about anything.
So this little clip Dave showed me, Time Magazine was doing for Dopey, and it reminded me, you and Chris, my roommate in treatment, John, I mean, he had nothing. Like I remember he walked in, he had like garbage bags of nothing. And my parents I'll get to the movie, I promise.
No, I'm not worried.
My parents like would take us to meetings, and we would like scrounge change together for cigarettes and the bus to go to meetings. And, you know, 9 years later, John was like my biggest investor in my film. So like my roommate in treatment helped me make my movie. And it's just like when I was watching that, I'm going to get emotional.
Good. It's always better when people get emotional.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to like weep. Actually, I'm closed off again. I'm good.
Okay. But I always show people, I always try to show people the thing because then they feel like they're closer to the show. That's why I do. And I want to impress people. Yeah. So for those two reasons.
I'm impressed.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Corinth, Mississippi.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in Corinth, Mississippi, and oh my God, I don't even know. You know, I used to say that like I had a really like normal upbringing, but I didn't. I didn't have a normal upbringing at all. My family was very like white picket fences. Everything is fine, but nothing was ever fine. And you know, spoiler alert, I'm a homosexual.
No, I didn't. I had no idea.
If that wasn't clear, a gay person. And you know, that wasn't easy in the 90s in Mississippi. Well, it's not easy now, but you know, I had to get out of there. And as soon as I could, I was an actor, and I went on tour, and then I moved to New York in 2001.
Hold up though. What was it like growing up gay in Corinth, Mississippi?
No one, you know what's interesting? No one called me the F word until I moved to New York. The interesting thing about Mississippi is that people are very like, they talk about you behind your back. So I think that like kind of shielded me.
There's a passive aggressive kindness.
Oh yes. Bless your heart.
Right. Right.
Yeah. If a Southerner says, bless your heart, watch out.
Right. It's like, keep coming back.
Yes. Keep coming back. Yeah. Keep coming back. It was tough. I mean, in the film, like there's a monologue in the film that's based on something that happened to me that I had never shared with anyone other than my sponsor and my fourth step. And, this traumatic thing happened to me that I had no context for because I didn't even have the ability to tell anyone I was gay.
What was the thing though?
I was molested like a lot of people, like when I was 15 years old. And yeah, I've never talked about this publicly.
Really?
You're a good interviewer.
Oh, God.
Here we go. Yeah. And, when I was 15 years old, in the place where I was most happy, the theater, I met this older guy who really groomed me, took advantage of me, took advantage of a lot of people in the town.
Actor or teacher, both?
Actor and a teacher. Oh my God, you're psychic.
All right. So actor, teacher in Mississippi grooms and molests you.
Yeah. And I didn't tell anyone. I mean, I was so confused about that growing up until closer. Like we're gonna,
Well, it sounds better. You hear it in your head.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't until treatment I put it on my fourth step and I said something like, my boyfriend did ABC, and my sponsor was like, I don't think that was your boyfriend. It blew my mind.
Because you had put it in a box.
I put it in a box to, I guess, like keep me alive. And then the drugs kept me alive until it got to the point that I had to look at it. And I did. And then I didn't tell anyone. And then I put it in the movie. And I guess, and now I'm telling everyone.
Well, how much of that traumatic experience do you think, like we all, drug addicts in recovery, somebody said at one point, oh, well, why did you do that? Or why were somebody who's not that familiar with drug addiction might say, oh, well, why are you a drug addict? Or why did you use? And I always never could answer the question. And I think somebody with your story might be able to say, oh, it's because I got molested when I was 15 by this teacher. But do you feel like that's the story, or that's just part of the story?
It's part of the story. But I do think, what I think? It's not even about, for me, being molested. It's the fact that I don't even think I had told myself I was gay. Like I remember being like highly aroused looking at the Sears catalog and like freaking out by that, like the men's underwear section, if that wasn't clear. But I didn't know what gay was because in Mississippi I wasn't watching. Like the gayest thing I watched was the Golden Girls.
Oh, it's extremely gay show.
But like there's no like real context for what. And so when that happened, I didn't get it.
How old were you?
15.
So you're 15 and you've gone through puberty, and obviously you're getting aroused by males.
Yeah.
And still you're protecting yourself by not saying, oh, I must be gay. That's not. So, and then somehow from the molestation, it became clear.
Yeah. And what's really fucked up is that a lot of his like victims, we started sleeping together, which I've never told anyone.
So how do you think that trauma informed your sexuality in general?
I don't think it really, the trauma informed my sexuality.
Just the molestation. I don't like saying the word molestation that much because I've dealt with this in interviews and I don't handle it perfectly.
Oh, you're fine.
Like I want to know more, and then I've asked more, and then somebody wrote in, you really shouldn't ask for more about the molestation, like what happened. And I never know what's too much or what's too little, so I'm trying to be more like laid back in my questioning about it.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm open. I'm ready. I'm happy to go there.
So what happened?
The actual thing. Oh my God, this is so fucked up.
Okay.
So I went over. So, he had me come over a lot. And we would like just do random things like watch movies, talk. And then one day, and what's really wild? I told my parents I was going to church. It was Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. I would always go to his house.
It was a church group for your folks.
Yeah. And I was working at McDonald's. It was actually the first McDonald's inside a Walmart. I was working there and I would get the last shift so I could go to his house and lie to my parents and say I was working late. And then one day, like I remember, actually, I didn't know it was the daytime until I did EMDR on this. I went over there and he goes, I want to show you something. And he put on a porn, and it was straight porn. And I'd never seen another penis before other than my own, much less like naked bodies. And so we're watching this, and of course I get aroused, and then it like cut to gay porn. And he said, oh my God, what is this?
Right.
And I was like out of my mind. And I remember we took our clothes off. He, had me like go down on him. And that was like exciting for me. But then another time, and this is like what's in the movie, is like he started dating my best friend who was a girl. And interesting, she was also 15, but this is Mississippi.
How old was he?
He was 25. And so I told myself for years, well, it's not that big of a deal because he was only 25. But
that's that's an adult.
It's an adult.
And you're a child.
And I wasn't the only one.
My daughter's 14 right now. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like 15-year-old guy is a boy.
Yeah. And I'm 48.
Yeah, you could pass for like 16 right now.
That's generous. I'd say, 30. So imagine what I look like at 15.
Right.
I probably look 12. And, he started dating my best friend who was a girl publicly. And, that was accepted 25-15 back then. I don't know why.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Itself. Well, yeah.
I don't think that's accepted now.
In Mississippi, I think as long as I think the legal age of consent is 14. I could be completely, I'm sure like
wow, Mississippi is fucking hardcore.
It's hardcore.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's hardcore. But yeah, so I went over there another time, and this is what's in the film is that he he wanted me to come over. He's dating my best friend. I think that, whatever, that's normal. And then he like physically rapes me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I disassociated. I was so confused. And like I said, I think, and this is what leads to the addiction part. I don't even think it was that. Like if I had an outlet to talk about it, I don't know. Did I inherit addiction? Who knows? But I believe that if I had had an outlet to talk about it, but I couldn't even tell my parents I had been with a man, much less that one
raped me.
And so, yeah, I just tucked it away for years and years and years. And I saw him again. And this is what's really wild. When I was 19, poor Dave. When I was 19, I went to college in Southern Mississippi, and I saw him again, and I wanted to sleep with him again. And he said, well, number one, I'm not gay. I'm not attracted to you. And I was just not having it. So we went home together. We had sex. And he was just like, and I won't kiss you. I'm not gay. You're not my type.
And did he know who you were?
Oh, yeah.
And yet he still went home with you, and you still had sex with him, and he still was part of it. And I guess my first question before you talked about the rape was going to be, how is it molestation if you're consenting, but you're 15 and he's 25, and then he rapes you? So it's like, and he didn't need to rape you. You were consenting up until then.
Yeah, up until then. But I didn't even know like.
What changed in that, like what fucking happened there? And I know this is crazy stuff because I've never been in that situation. At least my wife is certain I was molested, and I don't know it.
Yeah.
But I don't have any recollection of a situation like that. So what is different between consensual sex with him, and why does he do it like that?
I mean, I guess it's grooming. I guess it was grooming. And I didn't understand that. I mean, you know how when you're a teenager, you think you're an adult. I thought I was an adult.
Sure.
So even though I consented, it wasn't even consent really, because he used that porn to arouse me in a way that like I didn't even understand.
He took advantage.
Yeah.
There's nothing okay about, I mean, I'm not on the Mississippi Board of Legislature and determining when consent should happen.
Yeah, me either.
But as a father of a 14-year-old, I know it shouldn't be near 14.
Yeah.
Like it's a horrible thing. And how soon after And then it's also crazy when you're 19 that you run into him. Is there, what do you remember what you're thinking? Is it like a fantasy? Is it like, because he assaulted you and at 19 you're like, I need more.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that fucked up?
I mean, I don't know if it's fucked up, but I'd love to know what you think that's about. I'm sure you're not the only person that's ever happened to.
Oh, no. I mean, I hear about it all, even with work, like with my job, like those are the people we treat, you know? I think I disassociated a bit during the event, the physical assault, the physical assault. And I just kind of like accepted it. I didn't even know what rape was. I didn't know what any of these things were. And so what I remember as an adult, like it just seemed like my boyfriend he moved. And here's something really weird. Like my parents, God, when they watched the movie, because he has this monologue where he basically tells this story, I had never talked to my parents about it. They knew him. My father even contacted
The
him.
rapist has a monologue in the movie.
No. He's not in the...
It's an actor who plays you has a monologue about this.
Totally.
Okay.
And my parents and I never talked about it, but my dad at the time had contacted the guy and was like, you have to stay away from my son.
Because he knew.
Well, I confronted my dad once I got clean because my therapist told me to. And I said, hey, do you remember this guy? Blah, blah, blah. And Dad's like, yeah. I said, remember when you told him not to contact me? What was that about? And Dad said, well, a 25-year-old shouldn't be friends with a 15-year-old.
He's right.
Yeah. And then they saw the movie. And all my mom said was, did that really happen to you? And I said, yes, Mom. And then we talked about dinner.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. Very Southern.
How old are your parents?
Dad is 78. Mom is 71.
And not another word was said?
Not another word was said.
Do they ever talk about your recovery in general?
Oh, yes. Like my parents, when I went to rehab, they were in Narnon. They worked at their program.
That's interesting because they could be open with that, but they can't be open with this. That's how stigmatized it is.
Yeah, I was pretty closed off too. Like I didn't really open the door beyond.
You didn't really want to get into with your mom.
No.
Whereas on Dopey, you're dying to talk about it,
I'm so happy to talk about this.
Well, it's like I know that there are people that'll listen to it, and they will be relieved that they weren't the only person in that situation.
Yeah, I think I've wanted to talk about this a long time, and this is not what I thought we would talk about.
What did you think we'd talk about?
I thought I'd tell you my crazy meth story.
Well, we'll hear that too. We'll get that too. But we were talking about the movie.
The why.
Did you see Baby Reindeer?
Yes.
Because it feels like akin. It's like I don't think I would even understand your story as well if I hadn't recently seen Baby Reindeer.
So I had been told about episode 4 where he's groomed and assaulted. And I thought, oh, well, big deal. This will be fine. I got to that episode. I watched it. And I'm not really a big believer in triggers. That's just not, that's just not a word I'm fond of. And I never have been. But I got triggered. Not triggered to use, but triggered to
be traumatized.
Yeah. And I had to put the show away for 3 weeks, and then I picked it back up. It was just too much for me.
And you had already written your movie and had done it, and then this thing comes out. Are you like, motherfucker, that's my story? Is that a thing? Because I know that I would lose my mind if I had a similar story, and it if somebody else did a fucking documentary about a podcast about whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Did you feel any kind of way that a similar story had come out on Netflix to this great success? Did that fuck you up at all?
No, because my movie is it's kind of like a thriller, and it's very it's kind of supernatural. It's more about
Tell us about the movie.
Okay, I'll tell you about the movie. So
I was trying to get you to tell me about the movie before all this story, but please.
I guess it was meant to be. So the movie, it's based on a play I saw in college in 1998.
What's it called?
Wrath Mercy.
That's the movie, or that's the play?
Both.
Your movie is called Wrath Mercy?
Yeah, based on a play called Wrath Mercy.
Okay.
Now, the play is a very different. It opens with this mysterious woman in the middle of the stage, and this guy bursts in, and he's been shot. and you don't know what happened, but she starts asking him, what happened, what happened, what happened? And you find out he's been at a club and he did ecstasy and he like stole these diamonds. And you don't know who she is or how she's connected to him, but she's either going to inflict wrath or mercy on him. And so for years, I wanted to adapt it for myself as an actor. And I couldn't get it together. I mean, I was on drugs. I mean, I just couldn't get it together. And ironically, as I was adapting it, I made him a drug addict before I even knew that I was a drug addict. And then drugs took over, you know, they take over. And I go to treatment. My therapist is like, you know, is there anything you could like work on? And I said, no, that part of my life is over. It's dead. I'm in Mississippi. How can I like make movies in Mississippi? Like, it's over. And then I remember the movie. I pulled it out. I started to look at it. And then I started to see that I could tell a story about like why some drug, not answer the question, but ask why some drug addicts live and some don't. And then I decided to make him gay. I made him addicted to crystal meth. I had him encounter this drug dealer who is like that drug dealer we all encounter. Like, I don't know about you, but like for me, in LA, there was this one guy who's like, stay away from this dealer. Don't go to this dealer.
Why?
Well, at the time, I didn't know why. Oh my God, I'm going to tell you another story I've never talked about. I didn't know why. Well, then they all ran out. All the other dealers ran out. And so I had to call this guy. And so I show up. He's like, similar to the pull-up guy. He's like, well, you have to be willing to do anything that I ask. And so the first time was no big deal.
See, the only thing drug dealers wanted from me was money.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted anything else from me. And the only dealers I knew to stay away from had bad drugs or like not good or like shorted me. Like I never had anybody to stay away from for any other reason other than I'd get ripped off.
You used meth a little, right?
Yeah. In California.
I mean, I think the gay scene, the meth scene, like,
it's different.
It's different. It
or
really
it's
is.
like, I think it's also different for women. I think it's different for heterosexual women to deal with these predatory male dealers. But as a heterosexual male, no, you know what I mean? Nobody's really fucking with you, which is, you know, it's part of the problem out there. I don't know why more male heterosexual drug addicts aren't dealing with yeah, exactly. But it's a different experience. But I want to hear about this drug dealer.
So I remember, like, and his drugs were great. Like, they were like good meth, GHB. I mean, it was like, he said, okay, I'm going to film us and you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to be. And I said, okay, maybe I won't be on camera.
Did you still have to pay though?
I paid later. So that's the thing. So I did not pay.
Right.
So of course I hit the pipe and I'm like, put the camera on me, baby. So like there may be a video of me out there wearing a wrestling outfit.
I knew you looked familiar.
Yeah, you look familiar. Oh God. So we had this, we had sex. We had sex. You know, he made money. Like we went on some website where he made a lot of money while we had sex and people watched. And then another time he said, well, you know, if you ever want to come back, the price is greater. And so I did go back to him. And then he like took me to a party where I basically was like pimped out for like 15 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess we have to get there, but what was your, you know, how much were you using then? How bad was it? And like, how did you sign up for that?
At the end, I mean, I was using...
Because that's constantly. Total like Requiem for a Dream kind of situation, you know, like...
It is. I mean, it is. There was no double-headed dildo that I remember, but...
No.
There were... Yeah, I mean, I remember a sling. I remember like older men. Nothing...
What's the first word you use? A sling?
A sling.
What kind of sling? Does that put you in a sling?
I was, in a sling, yeah. I just remember he gave me the drugs...
And a sling is you suspended from the ceiling?
Yes, yeah, exactly. While I was just like taken advantage of. And I disassociated, you know, I remember it was 4th of July, 2013. Yeah. God, thinking about it, I can't even believe it happened to me.
Right.
Very painful. Yeah.
It's crazy. and it's horrible, and I'm sorry it happened to you.
Yeah.
So let's get back and we'll move forward. Let's get back to Mississippi.
Okay.
Where do you start using in the first place?
This is a really interesting question because I didn't use. Okay, so there's this story when I was a senior in high school. All my friends got arrested for like drinking and vandalizing our little town of Corinth. And I was like, I was a little goody two shoes, right? And so when I got clean, I talked to my former best friend about this. I said, so was that something you all did all the time? He said, yeah. And I was like, why didn't you invite me? He goes, well, you never would have come. You were a goody two shoes.
Right.
And I said, oh, interesting. You became a lawyer. I became a homeless drug addict.
Right.
It took a long time. Like I drank in college. I did what everyone else did in college. It was really, I was in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. And I used cocaine for the first time. And that was when the heavens opened up, like they say.
And you were in school?
No, I was acting. I was doing an acting job based in Omaha that ended. And I don't know, that was when everything changed.
How old were you?
24.
Right.
And, this is important too. I mean, we're talking about why you become drug addict. I mean, why we become a drug addict. I had just come out to my parents in Omaha. My mother told me I was going to burn in hell. Soon after that, I used cocaine for the first time. So it's like the void we talk about kept getting bigger, and I had to fill it with something bigger.
And there's new consequences and for me, like, it's not that dissimilar for me. I started using in college, really. I mean, I drank a little bit in high school and I smoked a little bit of weed in high school. And then I wound up getting really into heroin in my early 20s, but it wasn't until I had a relationship with my best friend's girlfriend that I really, like, I was going to be, I was on my way to being a heroin addict, but it wasn't until that happened that it was like the push down the giant hill. And it sounds like you coming out was
yeah, that was the push.
So do you remember coming out?
I remember every detail.
So tell us about it.
This is a good story too. I mean, so the tour ended. I had no money, so I stayed in Omaha. I had nowhere else to go, and I would do little acting jobs here and there. And my parents came to see me in a show, and I was living with an out gay guy, and I was closeted, and he's like, "Well, I'm not going to pretend to be anything I'm not in front of your parents."
Were you guys together or not together?
Not together.
Just friends?
Just friends, yeah.
Roommates.
And then, even though in the gay world, but nothing ever happened, I swear.
I believe you.
I mean, at this point, I'm pretty honest. So, like, they left. They went back to Mississippi, and I was doing Grease. I guess everyone knows Grease. And I had been booked. They were hiring, like...
Who did you play?
Teen Angel. So they hired like local celebrities to do Teen Angel in shifts. And so I was doing it like 2 weekends, and I was a local celebrity in Omaha. And I didn't have to show up until intermission because I was Teen Angel. And it was about 5-10 minutes before I had to go. And my mom calls. And I always said, like, even the people I was out to in college, like my friends, the theater department, I said, if they ever ask, I'll tell them, but I'm never coming out. And she said, I want to talk to you about your roommate. I said, okay. I said, well, I've got to go. I'm about to go do the show. She goes, this won't take long. I'm concerned for your health because you're going to get AIDS using the same sink.
Your mother.
My mother.
Yeah.
This man, I don't know if he had HIV or not. And I just said, Mom, that's not how it works. That's not how you get HIV. And I'm sure we said something else, but the thing I remember next was, Mom, it's like almost a comedy. I remember her saying, are you a homosexual? And in that moment, I remembered every time I said, well, if they ask, I'll tell. And I said, Mom, do you really want to know the answer to that? And she said, you're going to burn in hell.
She said that?
Yeah. And I said, I got to go do the show. And I hung up, drove to the theater, walked in. The producer was there. there was a bar like right there. And she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I just came out to my parents. It didn't go well. I'm going to go to hell." She grabbed a snifter, filled it with cognac, said, "Drink this." I downed it, went backstage, climbed up the steps, walked out, sang the song. I don't remember anything for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you on some crazy bender?
I honestly don't remember. All I remember is the next weekend, someone else had to go on for me. I remember I had lost my voice. I should probably do EMDR on this too. I don't remember. I really don't remember.
How does EMDR work at all?
Oh my God, EMDR. I mean, I'm not an expert. I've done it a few times, but I remember when we talked about, well, I'll give this example. So what I was talking about when I was molested when I was a kid, I didn't remember the time of day. I didn't remember. All I really remembered is him grabbing me and throwing me on the bed and raping me. I brought this up to my therapist. I said, "I'd like to do EMDR on this." And so, and there was a lot of safety and stabilization. So we talked about it a lot. And then eventually we began with, I can't remember if we began with what I remembered. I think it was him throwing me on the bed. And then there's like resourcing with rapid eye movement. And I'm not a clinician. But what the EMDR did is it brought back a memory where I actually walked up to the door and knocked. And I remember it being daytime, and I remember him letting me in. And just having that memory freed me in so many ways.
Because it wasn't a monster. You could right size it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting, I can't remember her name, and I feel so bad, but like when the Supreme Court thing happened where the woman at Ford, I think, accused, oh God, I'm such a bad person.
I don't know anything, so you can say any name you want, and
I'll
I'll say
make up
that's
names.
Yes, that's fine.
Was it Alito? Not Alito. Who knows? That guy, Kavanaugh.
Okay.
And they kept grilling her about the details of the assault, and she didn't recall. And people online were like, "Well, it didn't happen if she can't remember A, B, and C." And I was like, well, I didn't even remember if I was raped during the day or not.
And you don't remember 2 weeks after coming out to your parents.
Exactly. And it just shows how little people know about anything.
Well, I mean, I think the way memory works is pretty mysterious, and the way our brains function, and like the fact that we can recall every lyric to a commercial from when you're 12 and you can't remember last week or it's weird. And like, I mean, my father-in-law, who's dying of dementia now, he had a recall in his 60s of being molested as a 5-year-old in France in a monastery, and he had never watching a movie. In his 60s, it came back to him. So it's like there's no way to make sense of it. Let me ask you a stupid question before we get into your drug using career.
Okay.
How often? I guess you don't really tell this story very often, but has anyone ever questioned the having sex with the molester when you're 19?
I have.
And what do you do with that information?
I always wondered why it helps me see like my pattern with men today. And like from then on, like ever since then, there could be like, I remember when I lived in New York, like I worked at 5 Points restaurant. It's Vic's now. And I remember this really hot guy came in, gave me his number. He asked me out on a date. I go to his apartment. He lived like around 14th Street in this beautiful loft, editor at Random House, had a beautiful dog. Sex was incredible. Like it was just like everything. But the closeted asshole I worked with, who actually had a girlfriend who kept us a secret, was the one I wanted to be with. And I say all that to take it back to this. Like, who knows why I did it, but it certainly started a pattern with me. I think I just wanted to be back with my boyfriend, who was never my boyfriend at all.
Right. So it was this weird longing to be mistreated.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do weird stuff. Like
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's like why people wind up with people that are like their parents.
I still do it. I mean, I have a crush. I had a crush right now who I would just let really take advantage of me in so many ways. And luckily, my sponsor helped me with it. I was just able to like we put him away.
Right.
Put him away.
And it requires work, right?
Yeah.
So you drink the snifter of cognac,
Yeah.
black out for 2 weeks, and when you come to, are you just a raging cokehead?
Yeah, pretty much.
And how does and you just wander to LA in search of gigs and stuff?
Well, New York first. Like at that time, I found a guy in Omaha. He was a travel agent. Remember travel agents? He was a travel agent.
I was looking for a travel agent yesterday. Like I have a hard time booking flights. It's
Actually,
like,
no
I find
one.
it very stressful.
I know one, but not this guy. We're not going to give you this guy. This guy, he provided. That's when we would do crank. I still don't know what crank is. Is crank meth?
I think so.
So I guess that's when I started to do meth. So I started to do this crank with this travel agent, moved to New York, and then he would fly me back to Omaha where I would do crank and like have sex parties and then come back to New York. But it was right after coming out and the blackout that I started to do crank. And I don't even remember where he came into the picture. I met him at a bar, I'm sure.
Well, I think one of the interesting things to me in general is that in New York, and I'm going to speak a little bit out of school here, so brace yourself.
Yeah, I'm ready.
In New York, meth is primarily like a gay drug.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Tina, and straight people don't do too much of it in New York. They smoke crack and do heroin and smoke weed or drink or whatever. In California and the rest of the country, everyone's on meth.
Yeah.
And I remember a million years ago when Chris was alive and we were here and we recorded an episode called, I think it was called Even Gayer Than the Gayest Episode Ever.
I'm sure I've heard that episode.
And it was a guy who actually died. He actually overdosed. And he talked about meth, chemsex parties.
Right.
And it was pre-COVID. So it was like Zoom rooms.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
So at what, are you in those at this point?
So when I left, I lived in New York 12 years, moved to LA, ended up homeless in LA.
Hold up.
I'm just like,
where you gotta take us on this progression. You're in New York, you're using.
I'm using. I fell in love, toxic relationship, moved to LA, geographic change. I mean, I always wanted to be in LA. I always wanted to make movies. Moved to LA.
As an actor or director?
Both. Mostly an actor. I really wanted to be famous.
Me too.
Yeah. But here we are.
Here we are.
Somewhat famous in our own minds.
Anyway,
so I moved to LA and I really tried not to use. Didn't understand alcohol was
and
a drug for me.
recovery wasn't even a thing.
No, I'd been to one NA meeting. The Actors Fund sent me to an NA meeting in New York once. But it would never cross my mind to be in recovery. So I'm in LA. I'm trying to drink 2 drinks a day because I read something in GQ like that was normal.
You're not an alcoholic if you drink 2 drinks a day.
Yeah, even though I would like drink out of a vase, but like because we can justify anything. And one day I wanted to have sex. I'm a chemsex person, and I didn't know how to have sex without drugs. And so I have sex. The guy had meth. I wanted coke. I said, well, what's a big deal? I've done a little meth here and there, but meth is different out there. It was wild. And that was when like ice was really becoming a thing.
What's the difference between ice, meth, and crank?
Okay, so like this is my thought on it. Crank is like something you make in like your bathroom. Ice is like Breaking Bad stuff. Like that's how I see it.
And meth?
Meth is just
both.
like
Is the umbrella.
It's the umbrella. It's the umbrella. So I'm, a few months later, I'm, on the street. But, I didn't even know I was homeless because I had my car. And I'd be up for like 7 days. And so when you're not sleeping, you don't understand.
I'm sure you have no idea. It's like that movie, Tweak. You know that movie?
I've actually not seen it.
Oh my God. It's like the ultimate meth nightmare movie.
Yeah. So I didn't get it. I didn't know. I didn't understand. So I don't even remember what you asked me.
I asked you about the progression from coke to homeless on meth.
Oh, yeah. So that was the progression.
Yes.
Oh, now I remember Zoom rooms. We were talking about Zoom rooms. So I never experienced anything like that until, and this is the dopey story I've been like saving for you. I actually called it in about 6 years ago. It's on the show.
I used it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think I told it fully.
So let's hear.
Do you want to hear it now?
Of course. We're at that moment of the story,
We're
aren't
at
we?
that moment. We are.
Okay.
So this is at the end of my using. I used to use with this guy in Marina
Well,
Del
maybe
Rey.
we're not up to this story then. What about the highs and lows of being a drug addict? What about like the bottom after bottom after bottom? So basically,
Bottom after bottom. That was the story I told in the sling.
if you were going to explain, how long do you think you were on meth for?
Well, now that I understand crank was meth, I mean, I did that for the first time in 2001.
And how much time do you have now?
9 years. 10 in
Oh, me
October.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have 9 in August.
Cool.
So you have a year, you're a year and a bit more sober than I am.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, which is good. It's good to be more sober than me. So if you're describing to somebody the kind of scope of your using, like how long, so 10 years, so you're out there for a long time.
Yeah, long time. It was a like very slow progression.
How did you maintain it? What were you mostly doing for work?
Acting, waiting tables, I was a housekeeper. That was like the perfect, anyone who's using drugs out there, I've got the perfect job for you. Housekeeper. It was like the perfect job, especially if they weren't there and would give me the key to their apartment. I can't tell you how many times. Oh my God. You are like, just like opening me up.
Good.
I used at this apartment. I never saw the woman. For 2 years, I cleaned her apartment and I would get so high. I would like crawl around on her floor, fucked up on drugs, trying to clean her apartment. Sometimes it took me like 8 hours.
And she just let you stay.
And I was naked. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was all, was there anything else? Like, did you need anything to come down off of meth? Like, I know when I did meth, it was just an excuse to get back on heroin, really, because I was sort of in a moment of near not using. I guess I was smoking weed. But did you need benzos? Did you need opiates? Did you need anything? Or were you just like, you do meth and then what would you do afterwards?
I would sleep and then be filled with regret. And I would always, at the end, when I would binge, I'd get a new serving job. So that's what I was really doing at the end, serving. I'd get tips, I'd use, I'd make an excuse, they'd take me back. I'd get tips, I'd use, I'd get fired. And I would just sleep and maybe drink. See, I didn't understand, I talk NA language because I'm an NA person. Like I didn't get like alcohol was a drug. So like I thought, well, I'm drinking, so I'm fine. And so I would do meth, sleep, and then start drinking. And I did drink alcoholically. And I'd get a new job, and we'd do it all over again. I did get prescribed by a doctor Ativan when I told her I had a drug problem, and I sold it for Adderall.
Right. So you were not interested in the other end of the spectrum.
No.
And at what point do you think in your using were you like, I'm a drug addict?
The day before I got clean. 2 days.
Really? So you were totally compartmentalizing everything.
Even when I IV'd meth for the first time, I said, I'm making a choice to do this. I am not an addict. I really believed that.
It's like, I really like this. I think I was like, I knew I was an addict, but I also knew that I was okay with it. Like, that's how I looked at it. I was like, I'm an addict, but I don't want to do anything besides this.
Yeah, I didn't get it. And even people I used with in LA who were like, meth people are so weird. Like he'd be like we wouldn't like this one guy, he said, Brian, you're about to like cross a point of no return. And actually he was right.
What was that?
I mean, the point where I just didn't give a fuck anymore. And I didn't like.
Well, how did he recognize it?
I don't know. And maybe if I'd kept using once I understood I was an addict, I would have seen that in other people. I don't know what it was. I don't know.
That's interesting. I think I remember my point of no return was in the last bit of using when I was in treatment, and they told me when they tell you they think you're going to die, and then you keep using. I think that's where it's like. But what I mean, the best part about a point of no return is there is none, as long as you stay alive, because then you can return.
Well, my friend who took me, and we're jumping a bit, but like it's worth saying here, like my friend who I finally reached out for help. I don't know if you know that reading We Do Recover in NA. It's like that literally happened to me. Like I was like, oh, I either can go live under a bridge and try to sell my body, or I can ask for help. So I asked for help. My friend took me to a therapist. I said, I just need therapy. And she goes, no, honey, you're about to die. And I believed her. And I thought, like, what if I had not believed her? I may be dead.
Right. And, okay, what was the story, though?
The story.
Yeah.
The Dopey story.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And also, how did you know to send it in?
So I listened. I was a huge listener of This American Life.
Ah.
And I heard the episode, and it devastated me. You know, I was living in Mississippi. I guess I had, do you know when that came out? 2018?
Yeah.
So I would have had 4 years clean. And I'm so grateful for the treatment center I went to, the recovery, the fellowship in Mississippi. But I needed to get out. I was unhappy. And Dopey was really helpful for me as like a bridge.
I figured you found it through Mackenzie, but you found it before
long ago. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I listened, and I remember so vividly it was like raining, and I was in my car, and I said, I'm going to tell this story, and I'm going to send it in. And I remember when you answered the email, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to be on the show.
What did I say?
I don't even remember. I tried to find the email this morning.
Do you remember what I said on the show about it?
Yes, I do remember, because you made your father listen to it. And you said something like, was that too much for you? And I remember it was.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah, you made it. So when I knew I was coming here, I said, oh my God, poor dad.
Yeah, poor Alan. Well, let's hear the story.
So I was the type of meth user.
And leave nothing out.
I'm not going to leave anything out.
And I'll be quiet. I'll try to be quiet.
No, please, So I was the type of meth user, I rarely went into psychosis that I remember. I just wanted to have sex. Like that was me. But it didn't matter. I always ended up with the guy who was like out of his mind. Like people are listening to us. And I had this one guy I used with in Marina Del Rey. He was a squatter. I still had a job, so I had some money. He had a place. And every time, talk about insanity, he would be like, I'd be like, all right, I want to fuck. Oh yeah, we're going to like do it all. Bring the drugs. We're going to have sex for days. And I get there and like the carpet was ripped up, or he was like he goes, yeah, we're going to have sex as soon as I get like, all the bugs out of the wall. And I just be like, oh my God. So that was like our pattern. So
you had different needs, obviously.
Yes, different needs. Oh my God. And eventually like the cops are trying to get him out. And I was so like, there was like paraphernalia everywhere. And I was like at the door with the cops, like, you can't kick him out. I know the law, blah, blah, blah. Well, eventually they got him and they took him to jail. And I was sleeping on this couch in Redondo Beach. My best friend's brother, who was also a drug addict. I was sleeping on his couch, and then I get a call from a jail. And I didn't answer. And then I got another call, and it was him. He'd been arrested. And basically the cops, this doesn't make sense to me, but this is how I remember it. They were like, we're going to release him, but we have to release him to you. And I said, okay. Well, what I didn't know is that his parents were actually flying in from Ohio trying to get him. And you know how drug addicts are? I didn't think I was an addict. So I was trying to help him. Like I'd even talked to his parents. I said, oh, this boy is fucked up. He needs help. He's ripping out the carpet. So I really regret this moment, but I did go get him. And he's like, I need you to take me to my storage unit. And so I go to a storage unit, and I remember these papers that had like credit card numbers. And that like, something in me snapped. And the paranoia like came over me bad. And I was like, I gotta go. So I went back to the place. I was sleeping on the couch. And I remember them saying words, and I could like I was hearing other words. And so I started to lose my mind. And I was convinced that this guy who was stealing people's credit cards was actually going to go to Mississippi and harm my parents. Like the things we believe. Well, eventually, I wouldn't go to sleep. I'd been up for, I think, 7 days at that point. I'd been up for the most I ever stayed up was 10. And I think this was about 7. And the guy just like had it, and he started beating the shit out of me. And he's like, you got to get out of here. And I remember my suitcase was there, and I had a pillow and my cat, the cat I still have today.
Really?
Yes. That's a whole like other thing, but maybe the next time I'm on the show.
Wait, what's the whole other thing?
With the cat, like the whole experience of having this cat, like it's just so bad. But like, I love my cat so much, I make an amends to her every day. We'll just leave it at that.
You have a living amends.
I have a living amends. So he throws me out. I have my pillow and my keys. And I remember the roommate saying, you can't let him drive like this. I get in the car. I start driving. Started in Redondo Beach. I don't know how many, like Redondo Beach is in the South Bay of LA. So there are a few little beach towns around there. And I remember parking because I couldn't see. I was like hallucinating. I was in psychosis. I parked, and I remember having this moment where I just throw the keys in there. Let someone take the car. But I didn't. I kept the keys. I started walking, and then I started to feel like I was like drowning. Drowning's not the right word, like suffocating. So I walked into this laundromat, and you know, who knows how much of this is real?
Yes.
Because I was in psychosis. I go in, I'm like, I need water. And I remember this sweet little lady giving me a cup of water in the styrofoam cup. And then as she handed it to me, I was like, she's drugging me. And I poured it on her.
You threw the water at her.
Yes. Walked out. Then I remember like running up to a lady in a Mercedes, and I'm like, help me, help me, help me. The next thing I know, there's an ambulance, and they're putting me into the ambulance. I remember at that point I had not IV'd drugs, and they were like trying to put needles in me. I said, I won't slam drugs. Stop trying to slam me with drugs. Get to the hospital. I'm a raving lunatic. Like they had to put me in leather straps. Bad, 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 bad. Now this is the part you said not leave anything out. Like I had been on meth. They like put the catheter in me. It was like this hot nurse. And I was like, ooh, baby, shove that inside of me. Like it was bad. Like, I'm really embarrassed by that. Very embarrassed.
I'm glad you shared it.
Actually, of all things I've said on this, that's the thing I'm most embarrassed about. So yeah, they put this catheter in me. They find out I'd been using all sorts of things. And, you know, I was a lunatic all night. And eventually they pumped me with enough Ativan. I went to bed. Social worker comes in. I'm like, y'all can take the straps off me. Actually, at one point, I did try to get out. They took the straps off, and I like tried to bolt. But this time, I was like, okay, I'm good. You can take them off. They take them off. The social worker comes in, and she's like, do you remember all the things that you said to us? I said, yeah, I do. I really do. I said, clearly someone drugged me. And she was like, yeah, you drugged yourself.
Right.
But I didn't believe that because I'd never really been in psychosis like that before. So I said, no, this guy who's like stealing credit cards drugged me.
Either him or the lady at the laundromat.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which.
Yeah, or you know, who knows? The Mercedes, they're all in on it, spying on me. No. So eventually, you know, they booked me a hotel. And so I stayed at the Best Western in Torrance. No clue where my car is. Oh, before that, and this is really important, the cops came in and she said, you don't have to tell them anything if you don't want to. Cops come in, they're like, who's your dealer? Who's your dealer? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I just had a mental breakdown. And then I started to believe that I really did have a mental, well, I guess I did.
You kind of did.
Self-induced. And so I go to this hotel room, call my dealer. He comes in. I convinced my parents, like, send me a CVS gift card that I sold to the dealer for drugs. The cops show up. They're like, who's your dealer? Who's your dealer? And he's like, in there. And I'm like, you need to find my car. I don't even know where my car is. Like the friend, I was sleeping on his couch. He drove me around, helped me find my car. Couldn't find it. At that point, I had told my parents. They're trying to find a way to come get me. At that point, the guy I was using with
From Mississippi.
Yeah, I found all this out after I went to treatment. They're trying to figure out a way to come get me. I told them I'd lost my car. So this is actually when I went back to that guy. The second story that connects where I was like pimped out at the party because I had nowhere else to go and I couldn't stay in the hotel. So I'm staying at his place.
What made you choose him out of everybody? He was the only person that you could think of that had meth. And that would take you in.
That would take me in. That would take my call, would take me in. And yeah.
And again, it's playing that same initial trauma over and over again.
Exactly. And so there was this really nice woman at the Torrance Police Department. And I kept telling her, it's Mississippi plates. I don't know the license plate. I don't know where the car is. I just know it's near Redondo Beach. So my parents at that point, they were like, we're going to come get you. We don't care about the car. It doesn't matter. And I said, no, I have to find the car. I have to find the car. And eventually they found it. They had thought Mississippi was MI, not MS. And so they were looking for a license plate that began with MI. So eventually they found the car. I got the car, used like one more time with the guy. Oh, but I'm forgetting the most important part of the story, which was what I called the story when I sent it in to you. So before, this is meth. Meth makes it so confusing, even all these years later.
Makes sense.
So before the guy that I was staying with on his couch came to help me find the car, all I had in the hotel room was my pillow. And my clothes were so gross and dank. I ended up taking the pillowcase. It was like a t-shirt pillowcase and like cutting it up into a t-shirt.
I remember that too.
That's how little I was, like this little pillowcase.
Gay pillowcase story.
The gay pillowcase story.
And
yeah.
did you shoot after that?
Yeah. The reason I shut up, and there's a happy ending to the story that I have to tell you, but the shooting is in between.
No, tell me the happy ending first.
Well, I will say I started shooting up in Mississippi because the drugs there were like, I thought there were going to be. So I drove, once we got my car, I drove to Mississippi. It took me a really long time. And the Zoom room.
By yourself?
By myself and the cat, me and the cat. It took me a really long time because I stopped in Phoenix, met these guys I found on Grindr. And that was the first time that I ended up on a Zoom room. I'd never been on one before.
Please describe the whole thing.
So it's really weird. Like this was not Zoom. It was some kind of like underground Zoom-like. Of course, this could be psychosis and meth, but if I remember correctly, we got it from the dark web. This is where you log in and you can either use and watch people use or watch people use and have sex. And so I did that in Phoenix with this guy for the first time. Yeah.
And so you guys are on meth fucking, and there's a screen and a camera, and you're seeing other people on meth fucking?
Yeah, or just on meth watching.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So you can imagine like when we all went on lockdown and
right. That's the really crazy part to me is that Zoom didn't mean anything. Like when I heard that story, I was like, oh, Zoom, is it created for gay meth sex? Yeah. And then we're all on Zoom. Yeah, we're all on Zoom. And that's like, not to talk about work, but like at Breathe, like the people, like especially when we were doing like virtual IOP, you're asking people where the Zoom was part of the process. You've got meth, sex, technology all intertwined. And then the technology is part of the recovery. It's tough. Well, talk about. I want to hear more about. I want to get to when the real bottom hits and you actually get sober. Okay, yeah. And then I also want to know about gay. Like I never was in any kind of sex party with drugs, gay or straight. I hear a little bit here and there from people who are in straight kink parties or whatever. Yeah. But the gay ones seem to be way more ubiquitous. Is that the right word? Way more common than straight. Like people aren't like, you don't hear much about straight people drug parties. And by the way, if you're a straight person out there and you're in drug parties, please send an email or voicemail to dopeypodcast@gmail.com. But tell us about gay sex, meth, parties in general. Also, like, I mean, I just talked to a very close gay friend of mine who said he was just going to go to a sex party without drugs.
Yeah, people do it now.
It's very common.
Yeah, it's very common. You know, when I lived in New York, I worked for the MetLife building. That was another gig. And the person who, I was an administrative assistant, and my assistant, admin 1, admin 2, she was straight, and she would go to sex parties here, but there weren't drugs involved. They were just kind of like open, like, I guess like the key parties of like the 70s, but like.
What are the key parties?
You know, where you'd throw your keys into a bowl and then you'd grab keys, and whoever's keys you grabbed, you'd go have sex with them. That was a big thing. Straight people did that without drugs.
Yeah, I've lived a very sheltered life.
Yeah.
Considering all the stuff I've done, it's been very sheltered.
You have to ask Alan about key parties, maybe.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Pineapple swinger parties. But tell me about meth parties with sex. Like everybody shows up. It's fun, right?
Well, the problem with it
is that a stupid question?
No, but there's always a fun one.
A fun party?
Yeah, but you're chasing it, because for me, I had so many sex parties, but there was probably one that I chased for years.
And you just want that one again.
Yeah, and it never happens.
I think that's true about every party in general.
Yeah, and that's
sex party, drug party, whatever. Every party sucks except one, and you keep going to parties hoping there'll be a good one again.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, they were. I mean, if they weren't fun, would we even do them? I don't know.
So talk about the intertwinedness of sex. First, sex and meth. Like I did a lot of meth. I never had a sexual thing.
Really? Did you like clean the house?
No, I mean, the truth is I was in Los Angeles. I had just left treatment. I moved in with 2 friends. One of my friends was a serious drug addict, and he was away. And when he came back addicted to meth. And I was like, all right, I'll do meth with you. And we would do meth. I think we'd play video games. But it wasn't, I guess I didn't do it. We'd play music, we'd jam, but I wasn't. And then like very soon after I was on heroin, and very soon after I was shooting, meth and heroin together, but way more heroin than the meth. And meth just made me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Didn't make me feel sexual. Didn't really make me feel good. And I feel like I really missed out.
Well, you know what's so interesting about that? And I never really made this connection. Well, you know how we'll use, like if I couldn't find meth, I'd use whatever. And I remember this one time I used opiates. I never used opiates. Like I hated them, right? But when I used opiates, I wanted to have sex. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something to be said for like however our minds are fused to the drug. That's how I don't know.
No, I get that. And so what, like, you deal with a lot of people who have been in these gay meth parties. Like what, like how do they happen? It's just like, let's come over, let's get high and let's fuck.
Yeah. I mean, the way it happened with me, I mean, Grindr was the greatest culprit. I mean, Grindr like connected me to I mean, I don't know what it's like now. Okay. I've been on Grindr. I'm not on it right now, but like I've been on Grindr Clean. Let me be honest. But back then it was like, there was a little cloud. You could put a little cloud there and you knew that meant the person had drugs.
What do you mean cloud?
Cloud, like blowing clouds, like meth clouds.
Well, how do you put the cloud on there?
Like an emoji.
Of a cloud.
Yeah.
And that's how you know.
That's how you know.
And then like on Grindr, it's one thing to meet up with somebody and hook up, but it's another thing to be at a party.
Yeah, I never, like right now, there's this website called Sniffies.
Oh yeah, I'm on there.
Yeah, are you? I thought that was you.
Yes.
Sniffies, like, why did I even bring that up? That just made me laugh so hard. Sniffies, like people, I really lost my train of thought.
What is Sniffies?
So Sniffies is like Grindr, except for, okay, I was on it just like the other day.
Yes.
It's like, I don't actually hook up with anyone. I'm too scared.
You smoke non-meth at the party? And
non-meth. Oh, yeah, we were talking about sex parties.
Yes.
That's right. Oh my God. So now I'm admitting that I've gone on Sniffies on Dopey, but that's okay. I'm in recovery still.
You're
in recovery.
You're allowed to be.
Sniffies has sex parties. Like there's like a little picture. There's a map of Manhattan. There's a picture normally of like a penis, sometimes a torso, and you can set up a sex party on there.
And then like, how many people are usually in these things?
10.
And there's nothing wrong with sex parties.
Exactly. We're sex positive. Even at Breathe, we're very sex positive. I mean, part of like the IOP process is, so you unfuse meth and sex, and then you want to have a healthy sex life.
And you unfuse meth, sex, and technology.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, imagine all the weird PTSD in COVID.
Yeah.
Like of all these people who were in these sex Zoom rooms with meth, and then all of a sudden they're trying to be sober and they're back in a Zoom room.
Yeah. And that's why, at Breathe, we don't, I'm not talking too much about Breathe, but like at PH, we don't allow phones at PHP, and people, the meth guys get it. The eating disorder people get it because the Instagram and the body image, but like some people don't get it. Like, what do you mean I can't have my phone? Like I had my phone in detox. Well, it's because it's part of the problem.
Definitely. It's also a huge distraction. So you go back to Mississippi, and the meth is not too good in Mississippi.
Oh, it was bad. Well, I did try like to only drink again. And it's really important for me to remember that, because I mean, thank God I've been to treatment once. I've been clean ever since, but I have to remember, like, because that voice in your head sometimes like, well, I never really tried to stop no, I did. I tried to only drink multiple times and I failed. And when I tried to find meth in Mississippi, it was so bad, I would rather use Adderall. I'd take like 10, 30 milligrams of Adderall, and I would feel, you're like the only person who's never flinched when I said that.
Why would I?
People say 300 milligrams of Adderall.
Well, Adderall is very similar to meth. It's just an
I hate to tell people it really is. I mean, you know what it's going to do. At least that's how it affected my body.
Let me ask you this. Like, Adderall is obviously synthesized in a lab. There's no other thing in it except amphetamine, right? I mean, I don't know. I think Adderall is straight amphetamine. How does it compare to the best ice when you're doing 300 milligrams of Adderall? It's got to be very similar.
It was similar to me. Like I started taking Adderall in LA to write. Like I was trying to use it for good. The first time I took it was in college. We took Ritalin in college to study. And so I took, and that's how the disease is so, if you say the disease, the disease is so cunning, because like when I took Adderall later, I said, well, I took it in college and I was fine. So I took Adderall to write. I took another, and my pants were off and I'm watching porn. So it did the same thing that meth did.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're in Mississippi, there's no good meth.
No good meth.
You're taking a shit ton of Adderall. Are you shooting Adderall?
Well, no, it was hard to find Adderall. And I was too chicken to go to a doctor and try to like get it.
I have ADD. It would be such an easy thing to do.
I mean, I probably do have ADD. I mean, I think, but I was too scared. And so I eventually found people with meth, and the meth was garbage meth. They called it shake and bake.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I'm going to IV. And I'll tell you the story. The first time I IV'd, it's another, oh my God, it all ties together. Like I don't need to go to a meeting for like 3 weeks.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm good. Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The first time I IV'd meth, I was in a casino in Memphis with a guy I had a crush on. Same situation. Oh yeah, we'll have sex. No sex. Well, he was like hooking up with this other guy, and they were IVing meth, and he was like, oh, you're on a different level than us. And so I said, that's it. Shoot me up. And he did. Then he and the young guy left, and these like two, and I don't mean to demonize older people, but these two guys had their way with me.
Oh my God.
And it was nothing like I imagined it was going to be. I thought when I IV'd meth, I would be like this porn god. But really what it did was like, whatever soul I had left was gone for me. I don't know how people IV drugs, or at least meth, for years and years and years. Every time I did it for a month. It was miserable. Like it was like living dead, spiritual death, but I couldn't stop. And thank God it took me to my knees. fast.
And so you had a month of shooting
Yeah.
garbage meth
Shaker
in the
meth.
South.
Yeah.
And the result of it was you being done?
Yeah. I mean, I was done. Like I had been using in Memphis. I was so crazy. I had money, and like they were like, we were in a sex party and I had the money and I was so crazy. They're like, you got to go. And you know, when you have money and they kick you out, there's a problem. So they kicked me out.
Well, why? Why did they kick you out, do you think?
Because I was just a lunatic. I mean, I don't know. I remember like I wanted to go with them to the drug dealer and they're like, no. And I'm like, you're going to steal. You're going to give me garbage meth. And like, I was just
You were
crazy.
paranoid.
Yeah,
you were
paranoid.
loud. You were difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was in Tennessee?
Memphis. Yeah. In Memphis. My parents were in Coffeyville and I was living with them using in Memphis. And so I was at some hotel in Memphis and you know, they kicked me out. I called the cops and said, there are a bunch of people at this hotel using meth. I sat and watched. I watched them all leave. And I was like, ha, 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 ha.
You called the cops on them?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? Because they kicked you out?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they ever find out it was you?
I've never seen or talked to any of these people again. One of them I did hear has come in and out of the rooms, but I've never seen him. But yeah, I ended up, and now this is like a miracle, I guess, if you believe in that sort of thing. Like when I was in the car, in that moment where I was like, ha, 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 I showed them, I was kind of like, now what? And I reached out to this guy who I knew had been to rehab, and I don't know if it was subconscious or what, went to his place. They were also doing meth in the living room, and he was like, do you want to hit this? And I said, I don't think so. And everyone was like, and I was like, whoa, that's a
Reaction,
different.
Right?
I said, I think I need to go to bed. And so he gave me some Xanax and I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I remember that. And I'd been working at Gus's Fried Chicken in Oxford, Mississippi. And I drove there. I knew I had a paycheck there. It was $26. Got the paycheck. Thank God no one saw me. I just like grabbed it. And I went to, where did I go first? Taco Bell. No, I went to a check cashing place. Cashed the $26. Went to Taco Bell. Got a Dr. Pepper, a couple of tacos. Drove to the liquor store. I bought 2 Johnny Walker Reds, little bitty. A bottle of Pinot Noir. Downed the Johnny Walkers. Finished my Dr. Pepper. Poured the wine in the Dr. Pepper. Sat there and I said, holy shit, I'm a drug addict.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it was the Taco Bell that made it happen. And now you're getting weepy again.
Taco Bell saved my life. So if you need to get clean, go to Taco Bell. 2 burritos and 2 tacos. I don't know. But yeah. And that was the we do recover moment when at the end of the road, I lived it. And I had the thought.
Explain what the we do recover moment is.
So there's this reading in NA, we do recover when at the end of the road, blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, what else?
I can't remember it.
Okay.
The pressure. When at the end of the road, everyone else can remember it, but it's basically you either go on as best we can to the bitter ends, jails, institutions, or death, or find a new way to live. That's the important part. And so like it's all important. And I remember thinking, I got to ask my friend for help. That's when I knew I'm a drug addict. Finally hit me. I got to text my friend. I think I did. I text my parents. And then I text my friend. She goes, your mother's messaging me. She wants to know what you're using. I said, fuck them. And then I said, you know what? I could go live under a bridge. I literally had that thought. Sell my body.
You were in their house at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in their house. And you know, it's interesting about consequences. I think the reason I really asked for help was because I didn't think they would take me back. Knowing my parents, they probably would have, but I didn't think they'd take me back. So I asked my friend Tara for help. She took me to a therapist and we were just sitting there. I told her the truth as best I could. The truth as best I could at the moment. And that's when I said, all I need is therapy. And she said, no, honey, you're about to die. And then I said, all right, I'll go to rehab. Do I have to go back to New York or LA? They're like, no, there's rehab in Mississippi. I said, absolutely not. That's impossible. There's no rehab here.
And you went to rehab in Mississippi?
Yeah, a place called the Haven House on an indigent grant. I think my parents paid $2,500 for 30 days. And then I did Voc Rehab, where I worked at a law firm making $7 an hour, and Voc Rehab paid for my secondary treatment. Yeah.
And you managed to get your shit together.
I did.
You know, the first question I have is like totally unrelated to all of this.
Oh, good.
It's how did your mother not know you were gay when you're a teen angel at Greece in fucking Omaha? How could that have been like, how could she not have known?
So this is not the first time I've been asked this question.
Thank you.
And I've asked this question myself. Maybe we should call my mother and ask her. No, let's put her on the podcast.
Have you ever asked her since?
No, I probably should. But here's the thing about being closeted. I never tried to be masculine. I never tried to hide that part of myself intentionally, but I did. And I think, you know, just like we protect ourselves from trauma, like my mother, and this is how I've actually, like, we're good today. I want to say that we're good. Like, in rehab, we had a, pun intended, come to Jesus moment where I was like, either you support me for being gay, or you love me, or I'm going to use again, which I now know is not necessarily true, or not true at all. You can stay clean no matter what. But she believed I was going to hell. And the way I was able to forgive her was how awful that must be for her.
Right.
To really believe that the person she loved was going to burn in hell for all eternity.
And it was your mother. And and you knew how much she loved you, and you knew that all of a sudden, I mean, that's like the whole root of recovery in general. The root of recovery is being for others, you know, it's like the Francis Assisi prayer, like, you know, be the person who understands rather than needing to be understood. And, and that's what you were for your mother. And that was probably like a huge moment for you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think she had to compartmentalize it too. And that's how that's the reason she didn't know, because she couldn't know. Because if she knew, she knew.
Well, another really interesting thing to me is, like, I don't know you particularly well, but you've been an open book here, and you've said, I've never said this before, and I've never said that before, and you say it so easily. Is it because it's on your mind? Is it because nobody asks you these questions directly? Why do you think you're so easy to tell the story now, and you've never been historically?
Two things, and I know what you're going to say. You're a really gifted interviewer. I mean, you make me feel very comfortable. And it's true.
Well, I am probably the greatest addiction podcaster that's
earlier
ever been.
He was like, oh, no, yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, I'm just playing. I mean, I think that I'm going to deflect for a second and say, I bet it's because you wanted to come on the show. You wanted to tell the story.
It's very similar to like when I said, if my mother asks me, I'll come out.
Right.
I've wanted to be on the show since I ever heard about the show. And I knew I owed it to you. I owed it to the Dopey Nation, and I owed it to myself to give it my all.
Right.
To give it all.
Right. And we all, I think everybody out there and me appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
And when you, what was early recovery like? And when did you leave for Los Angeles?
Early recovery was amazing. You know, they would even say in treatment, like, are you really this happy? Like, yeah. I think like the greatest thing was like not having to lie anymore. Like,
you were free.
I was free. I also didn't people were having sex in the treatment center, and I didn't get it. I didn't know. I was like Mr. Rehab. And so I did everything they said, even though this is really important to say, like, I was planning to drink when I got out. And I said it very, like, people I was in treatment with were like, I'm never going to drink again. And then upstairs they'd say like, oh, I'm drinking as soon as I get out. Well, I was in groups saying, I'm drinking the day I get out. But it like opened, like, honesty. Honesty is the antidote to disease thinking. Like, I really believe that. And so I told my truth, and it opened me up to meet people who shared with me how they drank and then used or ended up cooking drugs. I said, well, I've never done that. I learned how to cook meth in treatment.
But you never got to practice
I never
it.
got to practice it,
Right.
not yet. Not planning on it just for today, but I loved it. Early recovery was great. But when I discovered Dopey and when I sent in that story, like that was a time where I knew there was more for me. There was more for me. And it was really hard to leave my parents. Like suddenly we had this relationship that we'd never had. And they're older. And the recovery community in Oxford, Mississippi, shout out to them. They love this podcast. Like I was telling them I was going to be on and they were like, oh my God.
Nice.
Yeah, my friend Mitch and Brandon love this show.
Nice. Shout out to Mitch and Brandon. Thank you.
It was hard to leave them. But I did. And I was working for another treatment center and they transferred me to LA. And I got to tell this part. This is the happy ending.
Good. I love the happy ending.
I love happy endings too. That's for next time. I'm working in treatment in LA and I had like a really shitty territory.
Were you working in treatment when you sent in the story?
No. Yes.
Okay.
I worked for Oxford Treatment Center. So I went to the indigent place, but I worked for the bougie place.
Okay.
Because, that's how it goes. The bougie place. And so they transferred me out to LA in outreach, business development. Oh no, your poor phone's, we've gone so long.
No, that's fine.
So I'm working in LA, business development. And for people who don't know what that means, that's like outreach. I'm letting people know about the facility, helping people find treatment. And I had like the South Bay of LA, not the best area to, anyway, that doesn't really matter. So I knew that was where I had been hospitalized, right? So I told my manager, I said, look, I've been in one of these hospitals. He goes, oh, well, maybe we'll find it, because that was my job. Go into these ERs, talk to social workers, tell them about the place I worked. Well, one day he's taking me through an ER and I'm like, oh my God, I've been here. I remember being rolled down this hallway. And I told him in the car, I said, this is the one. This is the hospital that I was in. He goes, wow, that's unreal. So, when you work in outreach, you go back to these places over and over and over. You give them cookies, you give them brochures. It's like just an incessant thing.
Sure.
Clearly, I love that part.
Okay, so you're doing your outreach.
So I'm doing my outreach, working in treatment, going to hospitals over and over. And so I go back to the hospital, that I had been in. I walk up to the front. I say, can I speak to the social worker, the head social worker? I'd like to give her these cookies and these brochures. And this woman comes out and I'm like, hi, my name is Brian. She goes, wait, do I know you? And I was like, I don't know.
She goes, you were a teen angel in Oklahoma.
No, she's Greece. She says, I recognize that voice anywhere. I said, did you work here in 2013, 2014? She goes, yeah, but I was the social worker in the ER at the time. I said, well, I think I was one of your patients. And so she was the woman who had been my social worker when I was in the ER, when I got strapped down. And she said, never, ever, ever in the history of working there had anyone ever come back, ever. And so I built this like professional relationship with this social worker where we help people get into treatment. And it's just like a really powerful thing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But what didn't you do Greece in Oklahoma though?
No, I did Greece in Omaha.
Oh, Nebraska.
I did Oklahoma in New York.
Well, it's complicated. So did she remember who you were at that point?
Oh, it was my voice, because she probably remembered me screaming like a lunatic all night. No one could ever forget that voice, she said.
I believe it. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then since then, you've like basically worked with treatment and you've worked with addicts to get them into treatment.
Yeah. I mean, Brad owns Breathe. Breathe recruited me pretty quickly. Like when Brad and I met, he recruited me into Breathe. And I said no at first because I had wanted to give the place that transferred me a year. Like it was the right thing to do. But Breathe, it's like so wild because Breathe treats me. Like, I mean, chemsex, body image, like it's
your thing.
It's my thing. And it's really crazy to talk about the movie, and I want to give this shout out to them. Breathe actually donated financially to my film.
Well, they should. As well they should.
As well they should.
They should donate financially to Dopey too.
That's right.
But explain, just in general, I know we've talked about it a bunch, but chemsex as a category, is it like, what is it about chemsex that's different than sex addiction or drug addiction or whatever? Like, why? Explain the category that is chemsex, if you don't mind.
So chemsex is sexualized drug use, right? Sexualized drug use. And it doesn't have to be meth and sex. It can really be anything, alcohol and sex, opioids and sex, but it is the fusion of chemicals and sex. And what makes it different is that fusion.
Because it's hitting you in a couple different places at once, which is creating this way deeper endorphin kind of experience, I bet.
Yeah. And the thing about sex is that, I mean, my sponsor would say, it's like a human need. It's like sex is a healthy, wonderful, normal thing. But when you are a chemsex user, there becomes a point where sex makes you want to use.
Right. Right. So it one begets the other. It's this weird triggering
Exactly.
thing.
There's a term for it that David Fawcett, who's a great person who treats chemsex, I can't remember what the term is, but it's what happens. It's like, it's a trigger, I guess you could say, like a euphoric recall of some kind. Like you watch pornography and it triggers the desire to use in a way that it wouldn't for a regular watcher of porn. Now, sex addiction, some people don't believe in sex addiction, sexual compulsivity, sex addiction, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That's another thing that's equally as difficult. But yeah, that fusion, it's really about the untangling of sex and meth. This is my non-clinical opinion, even though Kathleen, who runs our clinical program, would say, well, Brian, you're the expert. You're a chemsex person. The untangling is the easy part. It's the introduction of sex.
Without it
is the challenging part. Yeah. And yeah, it's really challenging. And so people like binge sex or they have sexual anorexia, and that's not good either.
Right. It's like balance is what we strive for.
Yeah.
Equanimity.
Yeah.
Is that what the word? Equanimity?
No, you had it right. Okay. I don't know what it means, but that's right.
I think it means balance in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to think about. And it's like, you think about cross addiction, like that's the old expression. Like,
yeah.
Like, and that was for co-ed alcoholics and stuff. Did you do any 12-step stuff that wasn't NA? Did you do ACA or SLAA or any of that stuff?
I've dabbled. So NA is like, I did mostly.
I love that you got sober in NA, by the way.
I did.
Because everybody shits on NA
I know.
all over. What do you think about that? As somebody whose life was saved by NA, do you still go to meetings?
Oh, yeah. I went to 2 this week.
Where'd you go?
I went to Bleecker Street.
Yes.
NA. Yeah.
That's where I got sober. That's where I got sober the first time.
Yeah. And then I went to.
Was it wall-to-wall celebrities?
No celebrities. That I was the most famous person there.
Nice.
And I'm not famous at all.
When I went to Bleecker Street for the first time, it was fucking like a movie.
Yeah.
It was like it was on Prince Street for whatever reason. It was in a basement the lights were off, candles on every table, and wall-to-wall celebrities. Like fucking, I could not believe it was happening. I was like, what? Like, what the fuck is, I didn't make it. I didn't stay sober in it at all. I was in it for 10 months. I didn't do steps. I did 1, 2, and 3. I drank and I didn't count it. Like, I was not a good NA.
Yeah.
But people shit on NA all the time.
They do.
People love to shit on NA. I don't know. Why do you think that is?
It's tough for me, to be honest.
When people shit on NA?
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's tough for me. And, I love that you share a lot of so many funny things about like recovery in general. And so like when you share like memes shitting on NA, or what's that other place? Dank? They really shit on NA.
Yeah, they really do.
And, in the beginning, it was really hard for me because it saved my life.
I think it doesn't, it's like people I think they just think it's funny. Like, I think that's really why people shit on NA, because it's like I remember like, it's just funny. I think I had a couple years sober and I was like, clean, whatever. And I never even drank.
Yeah.
Like I just got sober in AA because I didn't get sober in NA, and I was like, I should try something else.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't talk about any of this stuff. It violates every tradition. But
it does.
Traditions are just suggestions.
That's right. I remember when you wouldn't show your face.
Well, you know why I started showing my face?
I don't. Money.
Yeah, because everybody's dying to see my face. No, it was because I went on Mark Maron's podcast, and he was like, "You're an idiot if you stay anonymous. Like if you're trying to have a big podcast."
I get it. I get it. I used to not even say I went to NA, but I think it was like the tough part of people shitting on it. And of course, everything they say is true to some extent. Otherwise, like every joke is rooted in truth. Like of course it is. But it's really interesting that. Most people assume, like, this is the thing that I hate the most. And here we are again. I work in treatment. I come visit places, and people are always like, oh my God, we're going to go to a meeting. Let's go to this meeting. And I always have to go, well, I mostly go to NA.
And they go,
they'll say things like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make it, there's no difference. And I'm like, well, if there's no difference, why don't you not go to AA? That's what I want to say.
But what do you even, because they don't want to go.
Right. And so that's why I want to be like, so why can't I not go to AA? Why isn't it okay that I go to NA?
I think it is okay that you go to NA.
I agree.
And I also think like, especially like Bleecker Street, like it's got a lot of tons of recovery there.
Yeah.
There's people with 20, 30 years. But the joke I was going to make is when I had like 2 years or whatever, 3 years, I found an NA meeting on Long Island. And I always wanted a black key tag. So I just went to NA to get the fucking black key tag. And nobody had years there. And I walk in like
it's covered in cobwebs
and
dust.
Yeah, they were like, what? And I was the old timer, and I had like nothing. And but it was, it's a funny NA thing.
Yeah. I love it. And I've been, I've tried, I did go to AA, and I've worked the steps in AA, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. But I think that what happens with a lot of us is we find our home, and I found my home in NA, and something about, I'll tell you this, the powerlessness over addiction, like that word. When I had just switched to an NA sponsor, I got involved with this guy. Similar situation. Like he was like, actually we both 13-step each other because I had 10 months, he had 3 months. And he wouldn't kiss me. Same story. He's like, I want to experiment. I'm not going to kiss you. I'm like, well, I'll get him to kiss me. So we hook up. I go to kiss him. He says no. That feeling without drugs was one of the most painful things I've experienced in my entire life. I kicked him out, called my sponsor, and he said, he like pointed me to that first step.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. He pointed me to the first step, powerlessness over addiction. And something about that word, and I'm not saying anything against AA. I fucking love AA. But for me, that first step saved my life in that moment. And so that's why NA works for me. And so all the like things people say about NA, like for me, it's about the steps in NA and that word. And I don't know, it's just very powerful for me.
No, I can relate because I remember that first year that I was in NA religiously. I was like, this is where I have to be because these are my people. I am one of these people. I am a fucking drug addict, 100%, I think I got distracted by the drugs. I think I got distracted by almost being a part of it.
Yeah.
And not wanting sobriety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and for whatever reason, I needed to go to the place where like I swear, like I probably got drunk in my life 5 times, 6 times, and I didn't drink. Like I didn't have a problem with alcohol, and I had to go to a place and say I was an alcoholic in order to like get on some kind of path. Like, but it wasn't like I craved the word addiction over the word alcohol. I don't feel particularly powerless over alcohol, but I needed to be willing to just be like, I'm doing it.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like I don't know what it is. And I think that the most important thing is like, it can be NA, it can be AA, it can be ACA, it can be Dharma, it can be fucking smart, it could be stupid, it could be ceramics, it can be anything.
Yeah.
If you give yourself to something that isn't using and hating yourself, and you can be productive and engaged, then that's the best.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's like also like with Dopey, like, I mean, we want people to have fun and enjoy themselves in their recovery. And like, I mean, it's hard to have fun and enjoy yourself in recovery if you're not in recovery.
It is.
It's fucking hard, you know. And I don't like it to be fucking preachy or anything. I mean, like, I want to have a good time, and I want the show to be fun. And like, I don't need the show to save anybody's life in any kind of way. But I think you saying that NA worked for you will do that for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it worked for me. It works for me. I mean, I went to a meeting Tuesday night it was by The Cock. Well, it used to be The Cock, 12th and A.
How did I not know about a bar called The Cock? You know, Ray Brown knows about The Cock.
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, that's where my drug dealer was. So of course I knew about it. It moved somewhere else, but the meeting I went to was around there on Tuesday. And it was only 5 people there. And at first I was kind of like, that happens with NA. Sometimes you're like, fuck, there are only 5 people here. And I'm like, well, but then it was like the best meeting. And I heard something I never heard about the 3rd step. And it was like exactly what I needed to hear. So it still works for me. As long as it keeps working, but you know, Dave, it works if you work it.
That's what they say. I remember when I wasn't sober, and I had just gotten off of heroin, and I moved to Burlington, and
Vermont?
Yeah. And I was not interested in going to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not going to go. It was not going to happen. And I moved to Burlington, and I was fucking struggling. And I was still smoking weed. And I found a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and it was like in an attic of some scary fucking place. And it was like, I don't think there were lights. I remember there's slats of light coming through the thing, and there's dust in the air. And every person there looked like they had murdered 6 people. And I was like, I can't come back here. It was like the floorboard. In my memory, everyone's like spitting, fucking chewing tobacco in a rocking chair, and the floor is creaking. Like, I don't know where the fuck I was. Like, and I know that I wasn't sober. I wasn't clean. I wasn't anything. And I was super judgmental, and I was like, I need city NA. Yeah. I can't handle country NA. But NA is super robust in Manhattan. It's super robust in Los Angeles. Yeah. And it's super robust in a million places.
Oxford, Mississippi. I mean, robust.
There you go.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you for coming. I know you had a good time. I don't need to ask you. You had a good time.
I had a great time.
Is there anything else that you've never said that you're dying to say before it's over?
I love you, Dave.
I love you too, Brian.
Those are words I've never said. That's it.
Thank you, Brian. That was awesome.